Brilliance Audio presents The Last Campaign by Martin L. Shoemaker, performed by Rebecca Mozo. When I squeezed down to the bottom of the crevasse, there was no doubt about it. Simons was dead. I tapped my suit comm and called up to the top where Nick waited. "Helmet's cracked, Nick." I didn't describe the desiccated skull behind the shattered plexi. There was no need to. Nick had spent far more time on Mars than I had, and he had seen his share of corpses. "Photograph everything, Rosie," Nick called back. "Let's not have anyone doubt our thoroughness." "Space it, Nick, I know how to do my job," I replied with a sigh, but I smiled as I said it. Nick and I had competed since our first meeting, when I had been the new recruit from Brazil and Nick had been the arrogant spacer from America. After all these years, sparring with Nick over an investigation was just a pleasant game. Our spats spiced up the romance and kept things interesting. But then I remembered that in this incident, we had a dead Mars settler on our hands. Jacob Simons, age 37, had gone out on a scientific mission and had never returned. On Mars, past a certain number of days missing, you are presumed dead. But São Paulo Mutual wouldn't pay Simon's widow on a presumption. At best, they would pay her a fraction of the policy value, enough to keep her in air until she got her life in order. So Nick and I had volunteered to search for Jacob. It had not been easy. Mars is more complex geologically than people of Earth assume. In some places, vehicles and people leave easy-to-follow tracks in the sand, but in others, long stretches of rock show no signs of passage, and frequent dust storms can bury tracks in minutes. If Jacob had stayed with his crawler, we could have tracked that by his transponder, but he had set out on foot and seemed to have deviated far from the course he had registered in the expedition office. It had taken Nick and me 3 days to confirm his half-buried tracks and to trace them back to this small offshoot of the West Candor Chasma system of valleys and crevasses. So now we would be able to bring back Jacob's body, and Althea would be able to file for full survivor benefits. Not that that would make up for losing Jacob. Althea and Jacob were one of the closest couples I'd met on Mars. But at least there'd be something to help support her while she tried to rebuild. Maybe even something to invest in, a fund like the Red Planet League, and get some continuing income. I videoed the body from every angle, dictating notes as I did so. Nick watched through my helmet cam. The crevasse blocked my signal from reaching Maxwell City. If Jacob had called for help, no one would have known. But Nick was straight overhead so he could pick it up. He made suggestions as I worked, and I pointed out that I was already ahead of him on most of them, while acknowledging when he made good points. When we were both satisfied with my work, I shut down the camera and I called up. "All right, let's get him out of here. Take him home." I had elected to go down into the crevasse. Although Nick is not the tallest of men, I'm still smaller than he is and able to fit into smaller spaces while suited up for the Martian surface. When we had spotted the body from above, I had swapped out my oxygen pack for just a single small tank. This had made it easier to negotiate the crevasse. But now I had only 10 minutes of oxygen left before I was down to suit reserves. That should be enough, but if not, Nick could throw down a spare to me. A tank would be easy enough to catch in the light Martian gravity. But smaller or not, I was still cautious. I wanted to get away from Jacob's body before Nick pulled the crawler up closer to the edge. The ground had seemed solid enough from up there, but Mars could surprise you. If anything came crashing down, Jacob was past caring, but I wasn't. So I crept a good 10 meters from Jacob's body to where the crevasse started to narrow. Any farther, and even I might worry about getting stuck. I was glad to have a modern Mars suit, so much lighter and more maneuverable than suits from the early days of space exploration. I could never have navigated the crevasse with another 100 kilos of environment pack. Nick backed the crawler closer to the edge, unfolded the legs of the winch, and extended the winch boom out over the crevasse. Then he attached a harness to the cable. Then he turned on the motor to lower it down.